Greetings one and all, this is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks once again for joining us. Today's talk focuses on two primary issues. First, the Audi E-tron was officially announced. The second issue we cover today is bankruptcy for Elon, Tesla and company. How's that looking in the situation we're in now given production activities? We also sort of go through the week's news to identify some other issues that are worth covering, and look forward to doing so. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, please take time to like and subscribe. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. And we'd also like to encourage you to note that if this is not being viewed on YouTube, it's been illegally copied, and we'd appreciate it if you'd go and watch our show on YouTube, because it helps promote the channel and make sure that we're able to stay in business and continue offering the service that we do. Now, we've done a couple of shows on the VW E-tron, and new details are coming out. As you know, the car was introduced in California, in the San Francisco Bay Area. I think has a sort of thumbnail to Tesla that VW Audi means business in terms of delivering their vehicles. I was intrigued by this car because it looks good. You know, the fact is that other than GM with the 238 miles, none of the real big car makers in the world have tried to hit the 200-mile mark for their vehicles yet. So across the board, there's a number of firms that are saying that the car underperforms and that the range is kind of low, especially if you compare it with Tesla, and given that customers don't have a way to get things like extended range, supercharging, etc. I thought, you know, there are probably 4 or 5 points that I thought were interesting about the situation. The first one is that the folks at VW Audi should be congratulated. To date, their primary presence in the electric car market has been the e-Golf, which is a 100-mile range vehicle. One of the problems that shows up with the e-Golf, well, they were offering 100,000 miles. They're offering 100,000 miles, and they're also offering over 8-year warranty on that vehicle. If the battery goes down within that period, obviously it's replaced. But for the e-Golf, they're looking at $17,000 in order to replace the battery, and that's the smaller battery that would be in the e-Golf. One would think that the larger battery for the e-tron would be in that $40,000 to $45,000 range, and given that the list price for that vehicle is $75,000, if you paid $45K to replace your battery after 3 or 4 years, one would think that you might as well just buy a new car, given that most will have changed after a 2 or 3 year period, making not just the battery change a good idea. A few other notes that come off of that vehicle for me are the fact that it's great that they're doing 200 miles. The new Nissan Leaf is still in that 125 to 150 range is lurking there. One of the biggest problems that I see with this is, you know, Jerry articulated that there's some cobalt cost issues. I don't think for the first, let's say, 100,000 vehicles coming from Daimler-Benz or GM or from VW, the cost of cobalt is a big issue, because until a vehicle gets to 100,000 sales, it's a loss anyway. So I believe right now that some of the major makes have no choice but to lose money on the initial iteration of their EVs in order to just get into the marketplace, get their feet wet, and make sure customers know that they're not completely abandoning the space. So other notes that come to mind is the fact that, you know, there's a battery density problem. What that means is that Tesla deliberately chose Panasonic because the battery density is the highest in the world at, I believe, 95% and increasing. When you look at the batteries that VW and Mercedes and others are forced into, they actually are stuck in that perhaps 80-85% zone. And what this means is that they're at a disadvantage to Tesla, because all of a sudden they actually need more units of battery to get the same range. And the challenge is, the more batteries you carry, the heavier the weight is, the lower the range that the vehicle might have. So there's a 10 to 15% penalty on battery weight experienced by the manufacturers, and that difference turns out to be the 30 to 50 mile range almost that you're seeing in terms of the different types of vehicles. So I believe that the answer here is that it's a good start. It's a good looking vehicle. VW Audi has chosen the SUV iteration, which I think is smart, because oh, terrific. I think it's really smart to sort of operate in this fashion, because once they get their act together on the battery life, it'll make them a competitive product. But I don't think this will be very competitive or very compelling, particularly if they haven't built their supercharger network yet. I continue to ask the question, why do these guys want to try to do double the rate of charge that Tesla is doing? And the challenge I see with this is, why risk frying the batteries when your initial customer base is going to be charging at home? And even equaling Tesla gives you an adequate sort of charging space that customers are happy with. So I'm hopeful that the product works. I'm a Tesla fan, but the more manufacturers that get into the space, EV only represents 1% of the cars being sold. And the more manufacturers with experience and solid knowledge in the space, I think the better. It's interesting to also note that, hey, Audi VW has been involved with the e-Golf, and I think you can take a lot of lessons experienced by customers from this and extrapolate into what's going on with the E-tron. How a manufacturer of this size announces a vehicle and then announces it won't be available until next spring, I find that really strange. I also find it strange that you'll notice that in the case of Tesla, when they introduced their car, you had people driving it, somewhat abusing those vehicles, both the Semi and the Roadster, and people were able to get a real sense that this is a real car and that you can go ahead and drive it hard and see what happens. And we didn't see any of that with the e-tron, which means either it's not ready, or they're fearful of having customers drive it hard, because part of it not being ready is that it's in that good enough to have pictures of and announce that it's appeared. And I think that's better than nothing at this point. The one last note I wanted to drive into on this is just the idea that, wow, if you read about what's been going on with the e-tron, the fact that the CEO of Audi got arrested from Dieselgate resulted in the German manufacturers having to avoid when senior managers leave the country, because they're being sought for imprisonment by a number of other countries. So in the case of the e-tron being introduced, you'll notice that it was deliberately the US CEO of Audi that introduced the car, and they didn't have German executives flying to the US to introduce the vehicle, because they don't want those guys to go to jail right away and create all kinds of other issues. So very weird situation. Hope the car works. I like VW Audi. I think it's a pretty car, but they really need to get to work on, what are they going to do about batteries to be a factor. The second thing I wanted to cover today is, man, the tightrope Tesla's fighting to avoid going into bankruptcy restructuring. As we've shared, those 5,000 to 6,000 vehicles being sold a week are pretty important. But as you saw with, if you go to Tesla Fan Insight at Facebook, you'll see a lot of Model 3s sitting on the ground at the delivery facility here in Virginia, Tyson's Corner. And I asked one of the service people about this, and he said these are all just vehicles that have been ordered by customers that are waiting for the delivery process to those customers. What we come to learn is that Tesla built a bunch of the $50,000 variety vehicles, and they're trying to sell as many as possible before the end of the month. But the problem is most of the demand at that vehicle range, etc., has been satiated, and many of the buyers that are now in the market are waiting on their dual motor or so that they can deal with snow issues in the northern part of the US into Canada, as well as the dual motor performance. And for those vehicles, there's a 2 to 4 month wait, whereas you can get a single motor vehicle, almost immediately. So the question is, you got all that inventory sitting on the ground, nobody's buying it, what do you do with it? You still have a long waiting list around the world, particularly in Europe for the vehicle, but the vehicles aren't right-hand drive. So I think that it's weird because Tesla could have met its goals relative to production, but what if the vehicles produced aren't syncing up very well with what the customers really want right now? We should also remember that the dual motor performance and dual motor versions are being built in the tent, so it's a little different production process to get it out the door, hence why there also may be an imbalance between how many of those vehicles are being produced on both sides. So as we both know, I'm a Tesla Fan Insight person, so I'm hopeful for the best here, but definitely concerned and hopeful that the company can keep moving without any major hiccups related to how these numbers are rolling out and the revenue being brought in to pay all the expenses that are related to the execution of the plan that they're currently doing. My encouragement to Tesla right now is there's a bunch of people that are on our show in Europe and Asia that are waiting for their vehicles. They got to be right-hand drives. So I think you guys need to really think about either shutting down or curtailing the left-hand drives to get to right-hand drives, so we can maybe start shipping to Europe earlier and therefore get all those sales to start moving. The final note I wanted to sort of roll into today is the fact that, as we all know, Tesla has been sued. Tesla gets sued all the time, but the latest is that there's a SEC and FBI criminal inquiry into Elon Musk's tweet regarding the purchase of the company. As we covered before, there's something called there's been a big pump but no dump. And what that means is that Tesla pumped up its stock after Elon made that announcement, and he promptly didn't sell any shares. So one of the reasons why one would have severe penalties from a criminal or SEC standpoint is if you pump the stock up and sell it, and then the stock falls, that ticks off a lot of shareholders and regulators, and Elon Musk has not sold. So I think that it illustrates the point that he may have done one side of it, but not the complete activity that results in huge issues in that space for him. So I'm hopeful that it won't be a big deal, but it's definitely worth noting that that issue is lurking. I want to say hello to Jerry, Donovan. I noticed all of you saying hello there. I appreciate your doing so. We're at the point in the show where I try to pick up questions that might have been posed. Jerry, you asked about the cobalt prices. I really don't think for the first 100,000 vehicles from all the mega manufacturers, they're trying to make money. It's a loss leader. One of the most strange numbers that's out there is that GM is offering 238 miles of range with the Bolt, and the price is $38,000, and they lose $10,000 on each vehicle. In the case of VW Audi, they're offering 200 miles of range for $74,000. Now, granted, it's a larger SUV, and it has a lot more luxury appointments, but that's amazing that you're paying double the price for a little less range. And if GM could ever figure out how to get to Europe, they have a waiting list of 4,000 people wanting to buy the European version of this vehicle, but that $10,000 loss per vehicle is affecting motivation in doing so. So we'll see what happens if they do get serious with it. So usually what I try to do, true, you know, the other thing that can be said is that we actually know what the production of batteries is going to be from Tesla, but there's a lot of demand for the batteries right now, and there aren't a lot of suppliers. Everybody's working hard to build new plants, but it takes time to both build plants and line up things like cobalt and other supplies and lithium ion to make sure that those factories run. So I think there's a lot of lurking variables that can affect people's ability to both build and get their vehicles out there. Wow, interesting. Donovan, thanks for the comment regarding big stocks of Model X and S's. You know, one of the things I was really concerned about with Tesla was as the Model 3 starts getting closer, there was no doubt that, like, if you look at the trucks right now, the ratios are amazing. When I run into a truck that's delivering, it'll be 1 or 2 Model X and S, and then the rest Model 3. So the ratios are probably 10 to 1 for the Model 3. Wow, that's awesome. Donovan, thanks for the comment. No money down to take 3 X's. That's awesome. Well done on helping the company stay afloat, man. That's awesome. I'd also, Donovan, if you could send it in our notes, I'd love to find out how those vehicles are configured. Are you getting longer range? Are you getting the smallest battery? You know, any special features that you're putting on your X and why you chose to do so, I think would be very interesting for all of us to learn about. Now, I always take the end of the show to roam into territories that I think are important based on the demographics of my user. So my number one focus has been the health of my viewers. I wanted to review the fact that I want to encourage you guys to do 20 leg lifts with either leg with a 5-pound weight on there. Helps build up the quad muscles so that you reduce the chance of replacement knee requirements, less stress on the knee, etc. Number 2, I am now, based on almost every doctor I know taking it, I'm an omega-3 everyday taker now because 90% of the doctors I know, they're taking it. So I guess 300 milligram a day is probably a good idea. Highly recommended you consider it. The next thing I wanted to note is at least 30 SPF. You're going to be in the sun. Check out the paleo and the 5-2 diet as suggestions. The final one is the fact that my cancer doc for upper respiratory suggested no food 2 hours before going to bed, preferably 4 hours so all that food can digest so you don't get cancer from upper respiratory issues. Jerry, Donovan, Etal, wanted to thank all of you for taking time out to join us. Look forward to our next show in a couple of days. Would love to have any comments at the end. Please note, if you're not watching this on YouTube, our channel is being sort of ripped off by others, and would appreciate if you'd switch to YouTube to watch this show. You know, Jerry, excellent question on the tariffs. According to the Chinese, the answer is the tariffs are affecting Tesla sales into China, and so it is a problem, but they're not doing Model 3s there yet. I would say that the tariff situation relative to Europe, I don't think is that bad yet on cars, but it's definitely an issue when you're looking at vehicles going to China. But it's a great point, and you know, it can affect things, but I think the benefit of the Model 3 to European buyers is so great that I don't think it's going to affect once, you know, you have those vehicles being shipped there. At any rate, again, I want to thank all of you for joining us. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Tschüss, macht's gut, au revoir, la hitrot, choda hafez. In Jamaica, we say, no respect, walk good man. Your questions and inquiries are all great because it definitely affects topics that we choose to cover. Look forward to our next show where we kind of cover a range of challenges that are going on with the Model 3 that are worth noting. Um, hmm, wow. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, definitely. I look forward to the special offer. Hey, well done, Donovan. 3 cars. Amazing. Have a great day, one and all. Thank you again for joining us. And we look forward to our next talk.